Welcome to SST College of Arts and Commerce. This is SST Edupedia. Myself, Assistant Professor Sunil Shah. Today I would be covering up the topic called food chain and food web, which is there in the subject called Environmental Studies of Mumbai University of the class called first year BCOM, which is there in the semester 1 and it is there in unit 1. Students, as you are aware, environmental studies is a study related to environment and its surrounding. The person who is dealing with the studies with the human being as well as with the environment or any other person with the environment, whether it is a plant towards environment, study of human beings with the environment or of the any of the natural resources which is found in the environment. Today in this topic I will be speaking purely about food chain and the food web. Normally, as you are aware, what you learned in the school days, that is called the producers, that is called as carnivore, herbivore, omnivore. As you are aware, the producers are those persons who are producing the plants, and the herbivores are those particular animals or those who are eating up, they eat up only plant and all these related things. Whereas those carnivore are this type of categories of animals, those who are fed up, they are eating these herbivore animals. Whereas omnivore animals, as you have learned in the school life, there are those persons who are eating up both the herbivore animal as well as the carnivore animal. So brushing up the knowledge what you had it in the earlier days. Coming to the food chain, the food chain describes who eat home in the wild creatures. Every living thing, that is from one-celled algae. One-celled algae are those small microorganisms which are green in color, which prepare their own food with the help of sunlight, which are found as a unicellular animals, and to the giant blue whale, that is those persons who are mammals, need food to survive. As you are aware, we need food for energy, for development of our works, for whatever I am speaking right now with you, I am requiring energy. The energy I am deriving from the food and those products what I am consuming in my daily life. So every living thing that is from one-celled algae, that is unicellular organism, that is called algae, to the giant whale, which are in the mammals species, needs food to survive. Each of the food chain is a possible pathway that energy and the nutrients can follow from through the ecosystem. So in this ecosystem, the food chain is very, very important, and the path in which the energy has been conserved and utilized has been also been dealt with. For example, the grass produces its own food and from the sunlight. So for all these things we require sunlight, we require the water and the nutrients for the development of our tissues as well as for the body. Coming to the this particular diagram which is pictorial shown to you, it is particularly about the food chain. The green plants, they require water from the sky or from the rain. They require sunlight and for preparation of their own food, that is for through the help of chlorophyll and sunlight, what you learned in the school life, that is the process of photosynthesis, taking in of the carbon dioxide, giving out of the oxygen, and for the respiration as well as for the transpiration as well as for preparation of food. These two gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, are necessary, and these are called as producers. The producers, that is green plants, are being eaten up by the grasshoppers. They are called as primary consumers. They are fed on grass, hence it is called as grasshoppers. The grasshoppers are being eaten up by the secondary consumers, that is called frog. The main food for the frog is grasshoppers and different products. The frogs are being eaten up, as you have learned in the earlier life, that is been eaten up by the snakes. They are called the tertiary consumers. And the snake, when it has been died or it has been eaten up by the final consumers, that is called the hawk. The hawk feeds on the snake, and finally the final consumers are fungi, and in same way the food chain is being produced. Coming to the producer to primary consumer to secondary consumer to tertiary consumer, final consumer, and final consumer, that is hawk, or the final consumer would be the mushroom or the fungi. Coming to the types of food chain, if you see the classification of the food chain would be deleterious food chain or the grazing food chain, would be related to decomposing or something related to herbivore type. Coming to what you mean by deleterious food chain. The deleterious food chain includes dead organic matter. It includes species of organisms and plants like algae, bacteria, fungi, protozoans, the unicellular organism, mites, insects, worms, and so on. So if you see this particular classification of the organisms on the plants segment, that is algae, bacteria, fungi, protozoans, mites, insects, and worms in the animal category, they are detritus, they comes under detritus food chain. For example, dead organic matter waste is consumed by microorganisms like bacteria or fungi. So if you see the dead creatures lying on the roadside or any of the areas, they are being eaten up by the microorganisms and they releases the energies and send it to the atmosphere. In this food chain, that is detritus food chain, the dead organic matter of the plants and animals is broken down by the decomposers and the detritivores that are further eaten up by small organisms like carnivore. So explaining you again, the decomposers and detritivores are eaten up by the smaller organisms like carnivore. So if a person is dying, if the dead body is lying, they are being broken up, decomposed by the small organisms, and all the proteins, nutrients are being taken up by this particular organism. Example of carnivore like maggots, frog, snakes, and many more. Whereas detritus are fungi, bacteria, or protozoan that fed on detritus. So classification of carnivore, that would be related to frogs, snakes, whereas detritivores are fungi, bacteria, and protozoan that are found on detritus. Coming to the classification, I had explained here the grazing food chain. It begins with autotrophs. Autotrophs are those particular types of the plants which are utilizing the chlorophyll, sunlight, as well as the water. It begins with the autotroph, that includes green plants, passes through the herbivore, those particular organisms which eat grass like cow, buffaloes, goats, and then are to the carnivore, those like lion, tigers, wolf, and the different animals which are classified into the carnivore category. In this, the energy, the lowest trophic level is acquired from the photosynthesis. There are two types of grazing of the food chain. The first one is the predator food chain, whereas the one animal consumes the other another animal. So predators food chain, here the main classification is that one animal is eaten up by the other animal chain or the other animal. Coming once again, explaining predator means those one animals are eaten up by the other animals. The animal which is eaten up is known as prey, and the animal which eat up that particular organism is called as predator. Secondly, it is parasitic chain plants, and the animals in a grazing food chain are infected by parasites. So if you see the parasitic chain plants, those who have been infected by some other types of infection, it may be through bacteria or fungi. So if you see it in depth, these plants are eaten up by this particular types of animals. Coming to the food web, a food web consists of all food chains in a single ecosystem. So whatever I have shown you in that particular earlier slide, that whole food web consists of all type of food chain in an ecosystem. Each living system, each living thing in an ecosystem is a part of multiple food chain. So one ecosystem may be having multiple food chain. Each food chain is one possible path that energy and the nutrients make them through the ecosystem. Explain this particular point. In the food chain, one possible pathway that the energy is released from one particular level, it has been utilized by the second particular level, and the second would be utilized by the tertiary level, and finally it has been given into atmosphere. And once again from the atmosphere, once again the cycle starts and it goes into first, second, tertiary, and finally to the atmosphere. This type of food chain is one possible path that the energy and the nutrients may take the movement through the ecosystem. All of the interconnected overlapping food chains in an ecosystem make a food web. So students, there may be interconnection or overlapping of the food chain that would be also classified as a food web. Food web, if you see, the plants are being eaten up by the grasshoppers, they are being eaten up by the insects would be considered with flies, mites, and would be with the pigeons. Now coming into the second slide, that would be related to the food chain and the food web. If you speak about the food chain, it is a linear state pathway showing the flow of energy. In case of food web, the multiple of network, that means one would be interconnected with the other, as I told it in the earlier slide, showing the flow of energy. In food chain, it is a linear pathway, here it is a multiple pathway of the energy transmission. An organism from higher level trophic feeds on the specific organism of the lower trophic level is in food chain, that is the energy flow from higher to lower. Whereas in case of food web, the organism of higher trophic level has access to more members of a lower trophic level. So it is not necessary go to the secondary level from tertiary level or from secondary to primary. It may be from directly from tertiary to the lower level or from directly from the last level to the first level. So it would be not going into the order in case of food web. In case of food chain, it has no effect on the adaptability and the competitiveness of the organism. So it is free. Whereas in case of food web, it has a role in improving the adaptability and the competitiveness of the organism since it is interconnected food web. Explaining about the plants, plants are eaten by the deer, so deers are eaten by the wolf, that is carnivore, here was herbivore. And after the decomposition of this particular, the organisms are be through fungi, bacteria or different types of microorganisms, and once again it goes into the soil and the plants are been coming into the environment. If you see the food web, it is interconnected. The bird goes to the eagle, the birds are being eaten by the eagle, frogs are being eaten by the squirrel, the squirrels are fed upon the plants are being fed up, the grasshoppers are being fed by the plants, and the grasshoppers are also being eaten up by the birds. This is, if you see, this would be interconnected. In case of food chain, the major difference is that the flow of energy is from higher level to lower level. That is, it is in a linear pathway, whereas in case of food web, it is interconnected or multiple connected food web. So this is the main difference between the food chain and the food web. Thank you from my side. This was all about food chain and food web. The topic name was the food chain and food web, which is there in environmental studies of first year BCOM semester 1 under unit 1. Thank you.